only compagno show. Let's do that for limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen damje dewatang dewe jutang den pa jujig dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa juchik dungal mepe dewa tampatang mindrawa juchik nering chak tang ni tang trawe tang nong chempo la ne pa juchik. So good evening, everybody. It's lovely to see all of you. Our went, I'm very happy to say. So tonight we're going to do a true deep understanding of the meaning of illness, which is part 3. I was going to say this would be the final, but actually there's still a lot that we've got to do. And so I think that we'll probably still have another session and then we could do some questions and answers. So if you've missed those, then just go back to the other 2 and you'll be able to get them there on recording. So tonight I want to start with a story called Eating the Cookie, another Rachel Raymond story, but she writes such beautiful story that it always is very relevant when I want to do illness. So she says, another of my patients, a successful businessman, tells me that before his cancer, he would become depressed unless things went a certain way. Happiness, he said, was having the cookie. If you had the cookie, things were good. If you didn't have the cookie, life wasn't worth a damn. Unfortunately, the cookie kept changing. Some of the time it was money, sometimes it was power, sometimes it was sex. At other times it was the new car, the biggest contract, the most prestigious address. A year and a half after his diagnosis of prostate cancer, he sits shaking his head ruefully. It's like I stopped learning how to live after I was a kid. When I give my son a cookie, he is happy. If I take the cookie away or it breaks, he is unhappy. But he is 2.5 and I am 43. It's taken me this long to understand that the cookie will never make me happy for long. The minute you have the cookie, it starts to crumble, or you start to worry about it crumbling, or about someone trying to take it away from you. You have to give up a lot of things to take care of the cookie, to keep it from crumbling, and be sure that no one takes it away from you. You may not even get a chance to eat it because you're so busy trying not to lose it. Having the cookie is not what life is about. My patient laughs and says that cancer has changed him. For the first time, he is happy. No matter if his business is doing well or not, no matter if he wins or loses at golf. 2 years ago, cancer asked me, okay, what's important? What is really important? Well, he said, life is important. Life anywhere you can have it. Life with the cookie, life without the cookie. Happiness does not have anything to do with the cookie. It has to do with being alive, with knowing the truth about yourself. Before that, who made the time? And I think that life is really for learning about the temporary transitional nature of our stressful and successful circumstance of our life and going back to who we really are. And for working out what the illness is telling us about the negative imprints we created earlier. Otherwise, it's very selfish. It's selfishness. It's all about me. It's all about I. Now, throw it open, because I just want to say, it's such a conditioned samsaric life that most of us totally focus on what's going on around us and our feelings about that. And we forget that we came here temporarily to repair our previous creations. We came here to prepare them, sorry. And that although we have to handle our current situations and circumstances in a skillful way, it's more important to view how we got to this situation, what were the causes and conditions we created to get it, and resolve that. It's really important to do that. Then, if we do that, the way we handle the situation transforms absolutely immediately, okay? And I see many people who come to me because of what they're going through at any given time, and they want a solution, not assessing the total background. Like someone told me all the awful situations with their in-laws and how they disrupt your family's life and what to do about it. And I say, let's look at your negative imprint that caused you to have them in this uncomfortable situation. You created this. It's not that what you're doing there. You created this situation with your in-laws to resolve something internally. So let's focus on your mind's negative creation. Now, lots of people are not thrilled with that view because they'd rather just resolve and handle it. But handling it, one could call the human psychology, which happens using human conceptual consciousness. How do I handle them? What are they there for? You could ask, what are they there for? But how do I handle this terrible situation? I don't really know what to do with it. How do I handle this awful situation? You know, that's what people want. But I'm much more concerned, hello, Damika, I'm much more concerned with looking at how we got into that situation, what it really is about, because I think that's very important. So if we see it from a human conceptual psychology situation, that's using your human conceptual consciousness. But if we go further, then we see the imprint in the alaya or substrate consciousness. And that's more subtle than the human psychology. So we're looking at going more subtle into that alaya consciousness. And then if we can go even deeper into the ultimate deep level to get to the primordial consciousness, which is not even affected by any single situation that there is. It's not even at all affected by that. If you can turn your cameras on, it would be lovely, guys, because then I can see how you're understanding and everything. So effortlessly, when we get to the primordial consciousness, when we get to that lower, to that deep, deep primordial consciousness, okay, then the situation handles itself through you. That's the point. Because from the primordial consciousness, even the creation of the alaya consciousness or the substrate consciousness happens, and the human situation happens. So samsara, nirvana, everything comes out of the primordial consciousness. And that's where we're heading. So when people come to me and they want to resolve circumstances, I really understand that. And everybody wants to resolve their circumstances. But what they don't understand is that if you go to the subtle levels, which we were talking about in the last 2 weeks, that situation gets handled with great ease. Hello, Eve. And it's really important for you all to understand that those levels go subtle, more subtle, very subtle. And from the very subtle primordial consciousness, everything arises. So why are we only looking at the temporary? You know, today where I was talking to a couple of people and they were talking about their human psychology. And I happened to make a remark. I said, well, that's human psychology, Sham. All the UK people are coming in because it's 2 hours earlier for them, so it's quite difficult from work. Hello, Kati. We're happy you got here anyway. Um, so what I want to say is that you can deal with things from a psychological point of view and with the human levels of consciousness. But if you're going on a pathway, you really want to go to the deeper consciousness, to the more subtle consciousness, to the less coarse consciousness, and see how it actually transpires, how you actually get to that situation. The same is for all illness, mental and physical, that's the outer course manifestation, just like a situation that comes about only because of the negative karmic imprints. So illness, as I explained in the other session, is right at the end. So it starts off with all the negative things you feel and you put into action, and they all make imprints in the subtle consciousness of the alaya. And then those imprints go with you. When they become habitual, they get deeper, and eventually they manifest as illness. So if we're looking at illness, it's pretty pointless not to look at what is this caused by. And it's really, really important. Somebody today that I met had an eye condition, and I wanted to say, what is it that you will not see? But talking to this person, she was a very open, amazing person. And so I thought, this has got to be a deep karmic imprint before, in which she came into this life really wanting to resolve it and having a really positive attitude about a real bad eye condition that could result in blindness. And she has this beautiful attitude. She would have been born like that in order to really resolve it. So it had to be something deep that came before. So enlightened beings, I'm going to open it up in a few minutes, who may be born like us, but they have a Vajra body. They have a pure, subtle body, which does age, get sick, and die, but they are using primordial consciousness, so they don't suffer with their illness. That was the story I told you about the Kamapa, where every single night the doctors would come and they'd say, you know what, Kamapa, your levels are so bad, everything's packed up in your body, we're going to switch off the life support. And he would say, don't switch off the life support. And the next day would be fine. So actually what he was doing was just taking on the suffering of others through his illness, which was unbelievable, but he wasn't actually suffering from it himself. That's such an incredible motivation for us to think about not being dependent on it. So going back to Tulku Tondrop's description of the two ways that perception arises, for those that really weren't here, we have to ask ourselves the question, how do appearances arise? Even humans, even sickness, even a circumstance, how do they arise? And he says the answer is pure perception, which we'll talk about, arises contingent upon the realization of the nature of mind. That's your primordial consciousness, and the ability to remain in that realization. So as soon as you start pondering, but I have got this whole part of me that isn't at all affected even by my cancer, by anything that I'm doing, we're already starting to give way to pure perception, okay? But impure perception arises contingent upon the failure to realize the nature of mind and the inability to remain in that realized state, okay? Because the grasping mind that says, what's this? How do I do it? Why have I got this? Blah, blah, blah. The grasping mind will conceal that omniscient primordial consciousness. But when you touch it, it's cognizant, which means it already knows the reason, which is so amazing. And as I told you, actually, your human consciousness, your human mind, is in a different place to the heart of your primordial consciousness. It's in the heart, the Vajra heart, and the human part is somewhere near the lungs. So they're not even situated in the same place. So we spoke about 5 lights arising out of the essence, which if we perceive them purely with awareness, if we have that pure perception, they become 5 primordial wisdoms. What's a wisdom? A wisdom is what we should be manifesting. But instead of the wisdom, we manifest the poison. So if you have a situation that you are looking at and it is a mirror for you, you might see a very angry situation because you might perceive the anger, which is really the mirror-like wisdom. So we start to see how we can see life in a pure perception. If you're ignorant, which is ignoring the truth and just going on the human level, then it leads to 5 deluded sense organs. Eyes, ears, mouth, touch, everything will see it in a human way, not as it really is. And then from the deluded sense organs, you come to the 5 poisons, which are all the negative emotions. And from the 5 poisons, we come to the illnesses, the ailments, the illnesses, the high blood pressure, the low blood pressure, the cancers, the whatever, the mental illnesses, depression, and everything. So the most vital task of our lives is to recognize our primordial awareness and keep in touch with it. Because what I was talking about last week, and you can go back and listen to it, is that we've got to keep these bodies in balance. And in Tibetan medicine, they take the three emotions: passions, which is all your desires and craving; aggression, well, I don't have to explain what aggression is; and delusion, which is when you ignore everything. And those 3 are represented, we'll do more with the medicine Buddha, by 3 humors of the body: your air or wind, your bile, and your phlegm. Those 3 relate to the 3 poisons. So we need these in harmony with each other. And then, so let me stop there, and then I want to go to the mental illnesses where I stopped last week, because I think there's a lot that I want to talk about from that. Shame all our overseas people, when it comes to winter, they'll all be on time when it's our winter. So anybody want to say anything, ask anything, comment on anything, even about their own illness or anything? Hello, Iga. Anybody want to ask anything, what I've just said? Please do if you want to. Yes, please, Kati.
So Mel, if you're going through something, so I'm going through something still with a colleague at work, and I can see both, the both views, why this
Human
is
and
happening, what I need to learn. So the human and the Rigpa, but it doesn't, I mean, it makes it a bit more spacious for me, but it doesn't lessen what's happening to me on the physical, human, emotional side.
your shame. I'm going to get her. We're going to bring it to the talks,
Yeah, it's
Kelly.
very bad. I'm being gaslit. I'm being gaslit, and people are being turned away from me. It's just horrible, but
But
lucky I'm
it's
strong.
so important, because if you just mute yourself when I'm talking, otherwise the whole videos goes into orbit. Then you can unmute again. You know what? When it is so bad that you are changing the situation, but the situation is still going on, okay? That gives me the indication of the depth of the karmic imprint together with your cancer, okay, together with that you've had, that you cured yourself from. I mean, those two together are unbelievable because clearly you've come into this lifetime with a tremendous zest for life, understanding of life and everything. But I'm going to take a video of some of your previous lifetimes when you turned your back, because the longer something goes on, the deeper is the karmic imprint. So you take, I'm going to do the medicine Buddha, but you late, not maybe started today, but you take the medicine Buddha, get on your hands and knees if you have to, okay? And say to the medicine Buddha, I am going to resolve this relationship. I am not going to let it get 1 inch into my skin or anywhere, okay? And I want you to purify me completely. Just keep saying that, because if it goes on for a long time, first of all, it means if you're still irritated by her, you're still aggravated by her, even though you've got a different opinion, it's a deep imprint. She's someone in your life that you've known a lot of lifetimes before. Now the boots on the other foot. And you've got to say to the medicine Buddha, help me to find something likable about her. Help me to find that I'm totally immune to what she's doing. Help me to clear this imprint. You do it with passion, okay? I promise you it'll go away. It'll resolve itself. But to me, that when it's really difficult and goes on and on and on, like I'm telling you about this person with the in-laws, I said to this woman, your in-laws are there to stay for while you're married to this man, okay? And I can see exactly I mean, it would be enough to aggravate anybody, okay? Really, it would be. But what is it when it scratches you and scratches you and scratches you and never stops? Then you know it comes from you. It's very interesting. So don't give up. Don't give up at all. And between the medicine Buddha and Vajrasattva, do a lot of that, do a lot of the 100-syllable mantra. Between those, we have to get you through this. Again, I'll also do some.
Excuse me, Mel. Can I
Please.
ask a question?
Of course.
It might be a stupid question, but
Doesn't matter.
is it ever happen that you could become the sort of recipient of someone else's habitual karmic patterning or their imprint? So in other words, you almost become part of that as an unwitting or not. How can I say that? It's you belonging to someone else's karma rather than it's generated out of your karmic imprints. Is that not impossible?
Because I remember the Buddha, who was an absolute primordial being, saying to some beings, I wish that I could take on your karma, but unfortunately I can't. You can't take on another person's karma. But what I want to say about that, when you feel you are blending in with someone else's karma, when you feel like you're being pulled in,
like you've been sucked into their
exactly,
karmic narrative or their karmic drama. Yeah.
But their karmic drama, I'm coming to you, Jean, their karmic drama, which is so interesting, okay, is what you are needing 100% in your alaya consciousness. So it looks like you're being sucked in, but there's never a mistake about these things. That's what's so beautiful. When I once counseled people on whose family were in this plane crash long ago, and they said, but my husband was not supposed to be on that plane. How come? He was sick. He wasn't supposed to get that plane. And truly, truly, nobody is in the wrong situation at the wrong time. We all in the right situation at exactly the right moment. So if somebody's got heavy karma and you are sucked in, it's either that you've got that imprint that you need to resolve, or your imprint might be that you blend. I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, that you actually allow people to suck you dry in certain circumstances, okay? And that this is teaching you to remain, outside helping, not inside helping. Because I know what you're saying, because very often when I'm counseling somebody who's really, really under the weather and everything, I'm thinking, how can I do this? Can I take some on, And sometimes with people, they'll suck you right in, but you learn to be able to separate yourself when you touch that primordial consciousness. It knows how exactly to separate itself from them. Will you ponder that?
Yeah, I will. I was just also sorry, Kathy, to use you as an example, but I was just thinking about the scenario that it has been carrying on for a while. But if, when I think about you being part at Kathy and being part of this on this Buddhist path and the work and just with the journey that you've been on through dealing with your cancer, and I listened to you and how you expressed the perspective that you'd experienced, your whole perspective to that illness and how you navigated, moved through it. This was a year or so ago. And then, so I imagine you'd be bringing a much more enlightened consciousness to the situation and
Yes,
potentially the Mrs. Gaslighter. So, like what I'm trying to say is that if Kathy's kind of doing all the right stuff, but it keeps perpetuating, that's what I meant in a way. Does that mean perhaps that she's still like kind of enacting out someone else's karmic journey? Or, I
No,
was trying to
she's not
understand that.
enacting someone's karmic journey, but
Mm.
she'll have a very, very deep imprints that have to ensure that they get cleaned up in this lifetime. Okay, absolutely. So that's the point. That's why she doesn't go away, over a long period of time. We all suffering from her.
Yeah.
We can help her, but the thing is, you don't know what a powerful little thing she is. Okay, so somehow or another, just mute yourself so we don't
Oh,
get the video off. Somehow or another, she is getting refined in this life so beautifully. And by next lifetime, you're all going to sit at her feet listening to her great wisdom. And then she's going to say, I want to tell you about some of the extremely difficult karmic circumstances I had to endure to be able to be where I am. Watch. Think about that. Eugene, please, sorry, we took long to get to you.
No, so it's like good to see everybody. Um, so I have a
Lovely.
lot of girlfriends currently, and of course, like then there's different stuff, and I've become de facto advisor. Um,
Sure.
and one of the feedback with the one girlfriend is like relationship troubles, and it's always like I always give everything, but nothing works out, and in the end, I lose everything. And and I think it's hard when you see people struggling. And but at the same time, you also have to say, but maybe it's time to look inside. It's maybe time to find value inside of you instead of just externally and being there for everybody else. And really like investing and seeing your worth, you know?
I understand
Because
exactly what you're saying, and that's so
because there's
so
yeah.
important for people. It really,
Mm.
really is important what you're saying. And I think we have to just see where up to where we can go. Just mute yourself when I'm talking, because otherwise the videos, according to Edith and Byrne, they get very mixed up. But it's very important that we each able to see where we limit ourselves and to understand that it's not taking on someone else's karma. But there are lots of people that won't hear and won't listen and won't take what you've got to say. And, sometimes I have a feeling that a curtain goes over me. It's like like a feeling like, okay, I've done enough. And then I sometimes will say to somebody, look, I can't do any more for you. I've given you everything I can. Doesn't seem that what I'm getting, being able to help you. And I distance myself from that when I know that I've given my best. But often it's your own imprints. We can't, as we said in the cookie story, you can't have success all the time. But I wanted tonight to go on to the mental illnesses, because we talked last time, and if you weren't here, you could really go back and listen to all the things we were talking about, all the particular causes of physical illnesses, and the different ones, which I'll just mention one or two. We were talking about the back problems and what that is, that anger turns into things that boil and burn and infect the bodies, and fever blisters, kidney stones, and all of that are the pockets of anger. Low blood pressure, defeatism, high blood pressure, long-standing emotional problem, not solved, etc., etc. It's really important that we look at that so that we know what we're calling for, especially if you're going to do some spiritual practice with it. It's really important to know what we are doing. So we started last week talking about the mental illnesses, which people are really important. And we talked a little bit about depression, and the depression, when people say it's genetic, the genetic doesn't exist actually. It exists on a physical level. But the genetic is because when you've got deep-seated negative karma, that becomes your impelling consciousness, which then puts you into a family. And if it is depression, then that your depression will come up in a family that has depression, or a fighting family, or an abusive family, or whatever. Your own negative imprint becomes the impelling consciousness that they talk about on the Wheel of Life. The impelling consciousness, the karma is deep, and you can't stop yourself by choosing where you go, because it sounds so obvious that people should be able to choose the exact opposite of what they did, but you can't. You can only choose to resolve it in every way that you possibly can, because the impelling consciousness takes you there. So we were looking at manic depressive illness, obsessive compulsive, coming from a fear base, and then we got onto the autism. And my little one, Alice, who we call Lily, she said she's had a very interesting life. She's a wonderful girl, full of artistic talent. She's actually Avril's daughter, so that makes it a bit harder. But you know what? I love Lily. Lily, from the time I met Lily, Lily was always different, okay? I did not know the diagnosis that she had, neither did she. I just thought she was just a different person, and I'm very great in accepting people who are terribly different, in the world, who just have different ways. Now, she can take a piece of copper off the thing, and she can make an earring out of it. She's so artistic that she does it. So whenever I met her, she was always doing something or another, with her hands or whatever, and her beautiful artistic ability. Anyway, so last year, she really was having a difficult time, and she finally got diagnosed with autism. Okay. Now, I asked her tonight it's very, very interesting, because before you talk, I just want to say that autism and all the spectrum disorders have become so common in today's world. But I think that when I was growing up, I think there were many people that would have been diagnosed like this, but I think they weren't, because at that time, there wasn't such a diagnosis, which is also interesting karmically, because, there's certain times, and when we do the medicine Buddha, you'll see there's certain times when illnesses, mental and physical, have 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 medicines that can really assist and help. And earlier on, there were no such medicines, So for so many illnesses, the medicines only become manifest later on. But what's interesting is that Lily, or Alicia, if you want her real name, but we always call her Lily. I call her Lily Bell. Okay, Lily Bell was diagnosed with autism, and I was in total shock when she was diagnosed, because I was stupid. I should have actually understood that. But when I met her after she had the diagnosis, I said, "What do you think? What do you feel?" And she made a statement which really made an impact on me, because she said, "Melanie, I feel great." She said, "Now I know why I was always different when I was growing up." She said, "And I always thought to myself there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't the same as everybody else." Now, I have a lot of people who have spectrum disorder. They are different, very often brilliant. I think she is. She did a 4-year fine arts degree, okay, and she's done wonderful courses. And when she draws, she could take a pen and draw anything, anywhere. She's just got that spark and that intellect and that ability and everything. So I said, "Lily, would you share what it was like growing up? Because I think then I can actually, not to talk about her parents, because her mom is in the group, so we're not talking about the parenting. I'm just talking about what it was like for her." And then after she's spoken, I'm going to go back and Lily, I went and got all my autism stuff, where they put all the characteristics, and then if you've got a whole lot of tics, then you get diagnosed like that. And it's very, very interesting from a spiritual point of view, because that's how you learn. So, Lil, tell us what it was like for you as a human being growing up. Just unmute yourself.
Hi everyone. Hello. I'm not sure if I'm Alicia or Lily, for those haven't made the formal introduction yet. So to answer the question, like what it was like, so in the very early days, I guess when you're very young, you don't really have a conception that something is wrong or different. When you're young, you kind of have the bliss of ignorance, where it's like you're just running around and you're having a good time, and the struggles that you maybe would have like faced or face when you're older per se, you don't really it doesn't really manifest, or it's not something that people really take notice of. Like now we were kind of like, my brother, I have a twin brother. So my brother and I were always kind of referred to as like interesting kids, or like weird kids, but like in the best way possible, like, kids of character. So there wasn't anything that was like immediate jumping out. And that's also where it comes the problem, when it comes into societal like expectations of what autism looks like, or what it should look like, is that means a lot of people kind of fall under the radar because you don't present typical manifestations or typical symptoms of this type of like neurodiverse like way of being. So growing up, there wasn't really anything. I didn't really feel different until I got a little bit older. And then there were certain struggles that I was facing where it was like but this usually came in concern to social nuances, or the more kind of like intricate, complicated dynamics of living, which is like social dynamics, like socializing and the unspoken rules, which I think many of us probably struggle with a lot in life. It's not like something that only autistic people struggle with. It's like, everyone struggles with like saying the right thing, where it's like making friends or dating or navigating like job markets or school, or, and then like a kid, you kind of don't really notice that stuff kids can be as blunt as they want, you don't have to, like, kids are kind of just allowed to kind of be their most intuitive selves. And then when that social expectation starts creeping up on you, that's when I started to notice that I was struggling in certain areas, like in my adolescence, like early preteens. I say the wrong things and get into a lot of fights with my friends because, you know, a group of girls, there's these like social dynamics. You'd say the wrong thing and then suddenly all the girls are upset with you and you're like, what did I do wrong? Or there are other occasions where you wouldn't think something through because you just wouldn't know to question it, or it wouldn't make sense for you to do it another way. And then you have to actually learn how to navigate certain like scenarios. So the older I became, the more difficult it became. And obviously everybody's experience is different, but for me, it came into my ability to like socialize and enter like the adult kind of like adulting realm where I struggled in certain areas like with dating and with making friends. And then last year, when I had my difficult time, which ultimately led to my diagnosis, I was told that I was autistic. And it, like what Mel said, it wasn't actually something that I was shocked by because I have, in my friend groups, I ended up even subconsciously making lots of different friends who were also themselves also on the spectrum. So it is actually a very common phenomenon where it's like people who are neurodiverse, or even in cases of like if you're, let's say in Cape Town, you're from a like a particular community, like let's say like Italian, you end up finding other Italians to befriend. Well, it's very similar with like neurodiverse individuals, is they always end up seeing people out, even if they don't realize it. Um, and so I realized that I had been accepted, like the friends I'd made were people that were like me or thought the way that I thought, that they had accepted me regardless. But during that difficult time, I was struggling with a lot of like leftover guilt and leftover feelings of inadequacy that I faced maybe growing up in my adolescence, where it's like because I wasn't able to perform in a way that was easy, that other people made it seem easy. So like this would be in the form of like I said, making friends where you accidentally say the wrong thing and then you overthink everything and you're anxious because you want to make a good impression because you keep putting your foot in your mouth or you keep saying the wrong thing, and people just don't like you. And why don't they just like you? Like, oh, you got to try harder. You're not trying hard enough. Or in cases, I actually did waitress training for a while, and I was told, oh, working retail is really good for building character. But then I always wondered, but why did I struggle so much with this? Why was I left every shift feeling so drained? Like, why do I feel so completely, utterly, like, why am I so useless at this? Like, other people can do it. Why can't I do it? There was all these different things that you didn't actually realize because you didn't recognize what the signs were that you were autistic, because it's always viewed as in a particular way. And even if you have an inkling of autism, you're never quite sure how it actually manifests. So I had an idea, obviously, because my friends were, a lot of them are autistic, and a lot of them had been saying to me for years, like, you should probably go get tested. I think you should go to the clinic. Like, oh, you should probably go to the clinic. There's so many like stereotypes where you're like, oh, well, I don't do this thing, but I guess I also do this thing. Or you don't actually realize how you function with it. Like it's not just an illness, but it's more like a way that your brain is shaped. It's the way that you
Right.
perceive
Yeah.
things. It's the way you take in information. So you don't even you wouldn't even be able to really realize like how you in particular view your world with autism. So for an example, my example in particular is a very common symptom of autism is black and white thinking, which is like you're very absolute. So you have a very like particular perception of the world. Oftentimes this manifests with people with autism have a very strong sense of justice because there's a right and a wrong. But for me in particular, I didn't know how that manifested for me in particular until I looked at particular situations and my reactions to them. And Mel has spent many sessions with me, consoling me when I would just not understand why someone would behave like this. Like, why would they do that? Like, I would never do that. Like, why would they do that? They must mean this. And then she would sit there and try to be like, but yes, Lily Bell, but they might not have viewed it that way. And then I'd sit there going like, no, but it has to be that reason. It can't be any other reason because that it doesn't make any sense. Like people who do this or is it's because of this reason, and so forth and so forth. So it's like that rigidity. So you don't even realize like how it manifests until it's kind of like presented to you, being like, hey, look at this thing, like look at it. And then you actually
Amazing.
have to take it and observe it and be like, oh. And then
But you
yeah.
know what? To listen to her, isn't she amazing? You know, when I listen to her, that you even look Lawrence clapping for you. Okay. I mean, to be able to actually to be able to look there, Rona sent you a love thing. She sent you a thing. It's so beautiful to be able to come to that. And what I've said, which is very, very interesting. And it's beautiful that Lily's open to really look at a spiritual thing as well, because remember that all the spectrum disorders, I won't even go into them because she's given you a lot, but all the spectrum disorders are with the neurological pathways of the brain. That's how you come to do it. Now, when people say, but you can't help yourself, what I'm saying is, if you connect with your primordial consciousness, if you connect with with the part that is not even affected by the autism in any way, you can change things. And the thing is, it's not easy to do that by yourself. But if you have someone pointing it out to you and showing you, yes, but if you look at it this way, because one of the factors of spectrum disorder is that people are very stressed. They're stressed if things don't work out. Well, ordinary people are also stressed if things don't work out. But there's also another way to look at it. You don't have to go with what the brain is telling you, because the nature of mind, the primordial consciousness, does not function via the brain. So that people who do not have, people who are, for instance, handicapped, mentally handicapped, or people who have dementia, there is a part of them that functions absolutely from the primordial consciousness. And so then they can talk, they can override the brain. So what I'm saying is, if you look at all mental illness, if you have someone who's got depression and says, I'm depressed, that's how I am, I can't help it, or I've been diagnosed, I'm obsessive compulsive, I have to put everything in order. If you find people like that, but they are aware, like Alicia is, like when they're aware like that, they can change the whole pattern for themselves. But it's got to take a lot of effort and a lot of ability to know that you don't have to react with whatever your mental illness is once you have the awareness of it. You don't have to react like that. The genetics does not play a part in the primordial consciousness, which is so important for people. I mean, you can hear her. She's an animated, beautiful creature. She's always been like that, you know. But if things don't go exactly her way, it's very hard for her to actually just allow it to be. But she's learning that now. It's a different pattern. Learning spiritually changes all of that for you. So it's absolutely amazing. And the same with addictions. I mean, addictions, when people have got addictions, you know. Oh, just by the way, but with some of these disorders, it really, you do need some medication to help in terms of the anxiety or the way the brain is wired. And if you do the medication together with your ability to really start becoming aware, I think you can overcome that imprint in a lifetime for absolute sure. And I think that once you are aware, it's so amazing to watch what people are able to do, how they can learn different social skills, how they can learn everything. And the same with the addictions, with all the addictions, the drug addictions, alcohol, addictions to different things, it comes from a fear base. And that fear base is always, they can't cope because of the fear, and they have to go past the fear all the time. And so the addiction happens, and then it becomes a very deep habit imprint, which goes with you again from lifetime to lifetime. So what I'm really saying here is, and particularly with the Medicine Buddha, there are some tips of awareness for those going through mental illness, if they can and if they are motivated. For me, sometimes even I once worked a few times with mentally handicapped people, and they have an unbelievable spirituality because they're not bogged down by the human brain and by what we do. But some of the things I want to say to become aware when you are in that situation, there are several points that you can and do if you're motivated. Number one, we become aware of what our mind keeps doing. So once you are aware of what your mind keeps going back to, what you keep on repeating, and don't get me wrong, I mean, people with spectrum disorders are sometimes far brighter than anyone else. I've met a lot of people that suffer from Asperger's, where they aren't able, they have no control over their emotional communication, but they have superior intelligence very often. But if you become aware of your mind, of what your mind keeps doing, like we knew a guy who had Asperger's, and we went to his son's wedding. And at his son's wedding, he started delivering a speech, and he was brilliant, okay, absolutely brilliant. He was quoting Shakespeare and all these kind of things. But he went on and on and on. Why? Because he didn't have the awareness that the audience was now growing restless after an hour speech, at a wedding, and everybody was shifting in their space. But if you become aware that your mind does that, you can ask somebody close to you, please remind me when I am doing this. You can ask somebody with your awareness, remind me when I'm doing it, and you take the mind back. It's like observing a child, fixating, going back over it, and indulging in the negativity, instead of which, as soon as you do it and you've got awareness, you pull the mind back. That's point number one. Point number two, we stop labeling ourselves. That's such an important thing. You might get a diagnosis, but you are not a depressive, you are not a pathetic, you are not I can never. So when you do suffer from depression and you do suffer from mental illness, do not give a label to it. Just understand that there is something a little bit different about the way you function. But if you don't put a set, cut and dry label, which is from the human consciousness, there's a lot of scope to get out of it, which is really important. Next point, we keep reinforcing our Buddha nature. So every time we're in a situation that we don't know how to handle, or immense fear comes into people that have got obsessive disorders and things like that, you actually reinforce your Buddha nature by saying, this is a temporary drama, only one grain of me is affected. I have this true nature, and I must allow it to work through me and heal me. It's really important to be able to do this. We keep reinforcing that we've got this other whole part that is not involved in the mental illness. And we cease solidifying ourselves, our habits, and everything else. It's really, really important, everybody, what I'm saying. You can do it yourself. And Lily, I believe so strongly in you. She's gorgeous, she's creative, she's crazy, she's all these kind of things, And I really am so proud of her. I mean, just look how she sat here tonight and gave us all her things. And has been difficult. It's a struggle, but the difficulty is there because of the karmic imprints. You land up in circumstances. And one of the things that is, funnily enough, written about in autism, in the autistic booklets, it's a very important thing. It says here, autism spectrum disorder are both general terms for a group of complex disorders of brain development. And it says here that parents need to know, I don't know where I read it, parents need, it is not a psychological or emotional disorder. It's no one's fault. It is not a parent's fault that their child has been born with autism. It's not the result of bad parenting, and children with any of those conditions do not choose to misbehave. Misbehaviors are often reactions to the environment and the expressions of the difficulties people with those disorders actually experience. That's helpful, but that is only one grain of the story. All mental illness is one grain of the story in you. What I'm trying to say, and when we come to the medicine Buddha, you'll see how the medicine Buddha can help so much. It is absolutely vital for us to know that this is a temporary, transient thing, and that it'll all pass. And that you have to do your best to actually go through it in the best possible way. And more importantly than function exactly as everyone else, more importantly, clear the actual imprints. So maybe somebody else wants to say something, or maybe you want to say something to Lily. Then I'm going to read you a story and then we're going to meditate. Well done, Lil. Anything anyone wants to ask or say, please do, or comment or anything that you want.
Well, I just want to say thanks to Lily for joining us and for telling us the story, and just so refreshing, and I just think you're absolutely amazing.
So do I.
Thank
And
you.
did you hear the word she called you? Refreshing. And that's exactly what I do when you watch her hands working and her mind working at the same time. She's like different and exciting, and somebody's going to really appreciate that one day, really appreciate it, because she's creative. She can cook beautifully. She can do things beautifully. I've got so much confidence in her, and she's got the diagnosis. What's a diagnosis? It's only a human thing, nothing else. There's so much more that operates through all of us. And even when you come to a terminal illness, we're going to go through the kinds of illnesses, maybe not tonight because there's been too much. But when you come to the illness, which has no cure, which is terminal, and which you're probably going to die from, when you come to that, what is so important is that people who are awake and aware are not afraid. They really are not afraid. And the most important thing is that you've cleared all the imprints from this whole lifetime, and that you've used that as an opportunity, open portal to unity with your true nature. Aisha, do you want to say anything? You're very quiet and I can't even see your face.
No, this has been my first experience and I really enjoyed it.
Good, my baby, good. Do it lots, because there is a lot to learn and a lot to see, that we are not just the products of whatever. We have got a lot of other potential. It's so important that you all get this from this true meaning of illness, that the illness is there to speak to you, to tell you what you are doing and everything. It's very, very important that we all understand that. And Yeshe, you stop being aggressive. Anyone else? I'm going to read you a story called The Task Gets Between Us. The way we lose each other can be very simple. One of my patients describes how he spent time with his son prior to his cancer. We would hike a mountain, a difficult climb, side by side, both focused on reaching the top. Then we would come down a different way, one behind the other, to the car and drive home. We did this many times. In thinking back, I have a clear memory of many of those climbs, but no memory of anything my son said to me or I said to him. In child psychology, what this man is describing is called parallel play. You know, in nursery school, they say children parallel play. They play next to each other, not with each other. So it's normal for children between 2 and 3. At this age, children use the same sandbox or even the same toys, but they're playing alone next to each other and not with each other. Rather than relate to each other, they relate to a common activity which they do in parallel. My patient makes a great contrast between this and the way he and his son relate now. I can't do much just now, so we sit and talk. I ask him about his life and how he feels about it for the first time. I know what is important to him, what sort of man he is, what keeps him going, and I talk to him too. I know now that I'm important to him, that he wants to spend time with me, and not just because we can do physical things together like sport and that. Sometimes we just sit together, being alive. The mountain got between us before. I had not known that. And many people live their lives in this way, sharing homes, jobs, and even families with others, but not connecting. It is possible to be lonely in the midst of a family in your own home. Too often, we even practice medicine this way. Side by side, patient and physician focus on the disease, the symptoms, the treatments, never seeing or knowing each other. The problem gets in the way and we are each alone. Now, I think it's a beautiful story that she writes about, because sometimes you can't fix people, but you can intimately connect with them, just knowing you are there. You know, I always think of the bereavement work that I did, and Rona was there. I did a lot in her house of groups of bereaved parents who had lost their children, sometimes who'd lost a young spouse, or whatever the case is. And you know, sometimes when in the beginning they go through this, there's nothing you can really do or say that can really help them. I'm talking about in the beginning. They can obviously be helped, but in the beginning, there is so much trauma that sometimes it's just that connection, that just touching their hand and saying, I am here, that is the most important thing in all your lives. And sometimes we forget, we're so busy in the doing that we don't do the connection. And I want this teaching, I want to go on to the Medicine Buddha. And the Medicine Buddha is such a vast, amazing subject, because the Medicine Buddha doesn't just help you to heal your illnesses. The Medicine Buddha helps you to heal your imprints and goes right into your imprints. If you just play the mantra and visualize, it goes right into your very imprints. And that's what I'm trying to say, that even if you are sick, and even if you are handicapped, and even if you've got diagnostic things, you really, really, really can function and complete this lifetime in a really beautiful way. Anyone want to ask or say, and then let's meditate? Please do. Did you want to laugh? No. Anybody? Please, Clive, do you want to ask or say anything? Because we don't see your face, but I wouldn't mind. Damika. Patricia, even from behind the camera, Rona, anyone, do you want anything? Mimi?
Um,
Huh?
Now,
Yes.
I think just with AI and everything coming in, I think like we can now label anything and everything on Earth. And we can make sense of anything and have summary slide decks, expert opinions, contrary opinions, um, like latest theory, all within a span of 5 minutes. But I think the biggest thing and the biggest value of Buddhism is to tap into the primordial wisdom and to tap into your humanity and to have compassion and kindness for others. And I think, like you said, like it's like I think AI to me is like a societal shift towards parallel suffering. Everybody knows everything and suffers from knowing everything and knowing
And
and
no one
and I
forgets.
think that and I
Yes.
think that is also why we're in this current populist swing with like polarization of societies and nobody being able to find middle ground because we know everything, but everything we know might not be right. Like so,
It
and
might
then
not be
we
the whole
smoke.
picture, might not be right,
Oh, it
or
might,
might be
or
the
it's
whole.
relative knowledge.
Yeah,
It's right on a relative level. Like, so if you want to go conservative, you're correct. If you want to go liberal, you're also correct.
yeah,
But
exactly.
like that whole, and I think like that to me is like, I think our whole world is in a state of like escalated parallel suffering.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think we've got to be careful. And that's why you've got to take time to go inward and take time to find that part. Take time to be quiet. Take time to take in nature. I think that's very, very helpful. And also to say that if you can find these imprints when they are still in their subtle form, it really is extremely helpful. So, you can avoid a lot, or you could change diagnosis and things like that. There's no doubt. And also, I know so many people who've been diagnosed with terminal illness, fourth stage cancer, who've cured themselves. Now, how do you explain that? There was no medicine, but they've got no trace of the illness. I mean, there is no doubt it comes from accepting what you have to do, like accepting the path that you have to take on your journey in life and being able to take it and clear whatever it is that you need to clear. It's really important to be able to do that. So let's do a meditation, everybody. Just a little one, to silently look inwards, to just breathe in, really take a deep breath in. Breathe in your beautiful, beautiful nature. Just feel it around you, in you. There's a beautiful practice called the three skies. It's the emptiness of the sky, the emptiness of your whole being, which means full of possibility, but not absolutely solid, and the emptiness right inside of your original nature. Just feel that spaciousness, that openness, that emptiness, full of possibility and full of cognizance. And I want you tonight to just take any ailment or any difficult situation that seems to be confronting you at the moment, whether it's illness, whether it's a difficult relationship, whether it's something at work, whether it's financial, whatever it is that's confronting you, whether it's social, whether it's not having relationships, whatever it is, and just give rise to it into the beautiful spaciousness of your mind. And see the mirror right in front of you. And instead of blaming, shaming, hurting, fighting back, justifying, just look into the mirror and see the truth of what this difficult situation is. See if you can go back to really see the cause, how this came into being, and what the most important thing in your life that this is teaching you and giving you a chance, an opportunity, open portal to unity, to change a whole lot of past habits. This is a chance. Even if you don't make it in the end, it doesn't matter. It's a beautiful chance to clear everything in your life. Feel the spaciousness of your true nature, of your primordial consciousness. Open, blue essence, Dharmakaya, full of possibility. Feel it in your being, much greater than the little you. And open yourself to acknowledge that, to see what the mirror is showing you. If it's to do with your blood, it's to do with your life force. If it's a mental diagnosis, it's to do with all the habits of previous lifetimes bringing you to now. If you've had a difficult upbringing, look at it in the mirror. What was the most important thing that I've taken from this? Not that I'm holding on to, that I've taken from it, that I'm able to let go of it, not just to let it be, but to see the real reason why you were in that situation. What is it bringing you? And have I brought myself to understand this, or am I still living with resentment and pain and suffering and not accepting it? The day you can put your two hands together and bow with gratitude for all the hardships you've had in your life, that's the day that it all completely dissolves. And then you're free to go forward in a beautiful way in your life. Every day when you wake up, and once you've dealt with all of this, just open yourself to the possibility of all the things that you can experience and change, and make your aspirations. I'll give you the Medicine Buddha's aspiration. He had 12, and they weren't only for illness, they were for everything in his life and yours. And you can too. Okay, everybody. So I think that's enough for one night. I don't want to go on to the medicine Buddha. It's such a wonderful teaching that. And I'd rather leave it for a fresh evening, that we do it next week. But it's really, really helpful and useful to be able to do it. Honestly, it is. So let's dedicate Fee to all the suffering human beings, to all. I read in Mozambique that they've had these floods and all the children are sick and they've got diarrhea and they've got no food and they've got no homes and they've got the most terrible illnesses and everything. And we pray maybe if there's any merit from the teaching, may they be able to have it. And all the people in Iran, all those people that have died because of their protests and everything, we really pray that if there's anything here that they can learn, and maybe if they have contributed to the fall of oppressive regimes, it'll all be worthwhile. So through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience, may all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam die tamche zipane tokne lepe dranam pamshene jegana chibalak topaye sipe sole doa dro warsho.